And on top of that, if we see another increase in the fuel levy, then we can quite easily see the petrol price going up to as much as 22 Rand per litre within the next month or two.
The Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana, is set to table his first budget speech this coming Wednesday. We're recording on a Monday afternoon, and here to unpack the preview of the budget is Chief Economist at Efficient Group, Dawie Roodt. Dawie, you've become quite a regular of the CRA channel, largely due to your quality insights looking at national treasury figures. What are your initial thoughts of the budget this coming Wednesday?
I think it's important, very nice talking to you, important to understand the context, and internationally, of course, internationally a lot of things are happening, but as far as South Africa is concerned, which is very important for the budget and for the South African economy, is that the world is currently experiencing quite a strong commodity cycle, which is good for us because we export a lot of commodities, and that's good for the fiscals because they collect a lot of taxes from these companies making all this money. And the result of that then is that there will be a significant overrun in tax revenue. And it can be as much as about 200 billion Rand compared to the previous or to the original budgeted estimates. It's very important to note, however, when we talk about the overrun, it doesn't mean there's some sort of surplus. There's no surplus. In fact, it is still a deficit that we're talking about, a significant deficit that is. It's only that the revenue is going to be better than originally expected. So the Minister of Finance got a small window where he can sort of make a few adjustments and so on. But I think that is certainly one of those things, one of those important points in a budget that I will be looking out for, the minister's expectations as far as the revenue overrun is concerned. And I think he's going to be a little bit conservative when it comes to the overrun of the revenue. Okay, so now we've got an idea what the overrun is going to be. Then moving more to the various taxes and the possible adjustments to the various taxes, we can maybe just go through the major ones. Personal income tax is the most important tax for the Minister of Finance. I do not expect major changes there, but I do expect some smallish adjustments to address the effect of inflation, so-called fiscal drag. Not fully, but a little bit on fiscal drag. Value-added tax, that's politically too difficult to touch, so no major changes there. Company tax is not much, maybe a small adjustments because they're in the process of reducing company tax to 27%. Some technical adjustments there. But the only real controversial thing on the revenue side and on taxes is that I expect the Minister of Finance to, as always, increase the so-called sin taxes on cigarettes and alcohol and that, but also to increase the fuel levy. Now, that is important because the fuel price is going to go up by 130 or so pretty soon. And on top of that, if we see another increase in the fuel levy, then we can quite easily see the petrol price going up to as much as 22 Rand per litre within the next month or two. And that is, of course, people are certainly not going to like that. And there is already a lot of pressure on government to see if they can do something to reduce the petrol price. If I was the Minister of Finance, I will in fact increase the fuel levy and rather reduce some other more damaging taxes, like for example, company taxes. On the spending side, the most important single item on the spending side, and we know about this already, is a COVID grant, which will be extended, and a couple of other odds and ends, but a COVID grant is the most important one. And of course, the question is how long before we get a basic income grant or a more of a permanent social security support system for normal unemployed people. I think it's only a matter of time, but we will probably get a bit of a hint on what can be expected going forward. And then, of course, the big thing that the rating agencies will be looking out for is the debt trajectory. Will the Minister of Finance be able to stabilize debt over time? Will the rating agencies believe him? And will the fiscal deficit be low enough to, in fact, support a debt trajectory that is eventually going to level out and start coming down again? I don't think so, by the way. And then, of course, a couple of other important numbers like the minister's expectations in terms of economic growth, unemployment, exchange rate of the currency, interest rates, that sort of stuff. So, but from the major numbers, the overrun in revenue and the expectations regarding the COVID grant.
Dawie, in terms of that fiscal risk, in terms of the debt levels in the country, the IMF recently flagged debt servicing costs here in the country. Now, what is your thinking there with debt servicing costs climbing? And in fact, if you look at the risk premium, looking at South African bonds, compare that to United States bond, that has been increasing over the past 10 years. Do you see that trend line going up and up and up over the next coming years and the National Treasury not doing much to turn that trajectory?
I'm afraid I am quite concerned about the debt trajectory. Remember this debt trajectory, or the total outstanding debt. Normally, economists would look at the so-called central government debt, but there's a lot of other debt that should be included in this debt as well, especially from the state-owned enterprises. Only Eskom, the state-owned enterprises combined, their outstanding debt is equal to more than 10% of GDP. So you have to, on whatever state debt is, you have to add another 10% of GDP to that. Will they be able to stabilize that? I must tell you, I have my doubts. I don't think so. And the main reason for that is there is just too much pressure on the Minister of Finance to spend money on people. And like I think we've discussed this before, there are currently more than 30 million people already receiving some sort of income from the state every month, compared to 12 million people working in the private sector. Now that is a huge number of people that they are depending on the state for an income, and stop giving them money or actually giving them less money is going to be politically extremely difficult to do. And inevitably that means more spending, more debt, and eventually we are going to get into very, very serious trouble because of that. You mentioned the interest that other, or the yields that other countries in the world pay. Worldwide, what we've seen is an increase in yields in most countries, including the rich countries. Most countries in the world are significantly lower than what we have in South Africa, but worldwide yields are going up in government debt, and there are many reasons for that. But the one important reason is because monetary policy is being tightened internationally, and that is a huge danger for South Africa. If interest rates go up in the developed world, in the US, for example, the dollar will strengthen. If the dollar goes up, then other things will go down, like, for example, commodity prices or the rand and so on. And if the Americans or the rest of the world tighten monetary policy too quickly, then countries like South Africa with very high levels of debt can suddenly find themselves into very, very deep trouble. And that's something that I'm very concerned about. So the international, especially monetary policy environment, is extremely important for South Africa at the moment. And we are just not in a happy place, because you do not want to go into a situation where monetary policy is being tightened internationally and you have very high levels of debt, because that can lead to a significant and a sudden outflow of capital out of a country, and that will have all sort of consequences for things like, for example, the exchange rate and inflation, and eventually economic growth as well. But so the short answer is no. I don't think the current government simply is politically in a position to really stabilize the rising debt levels.
Thank you, Dawie, for your great insights, as well as unpacking the preview of the budget. Just a reminder to CRA clients that we will be hosting a webinar this coming Thursday, unpacking the numbers that we see on Wednesday. To register for that webinar, please click on the link below. Until next time, take care.